in conversation with Royston, Director of Research and Advocacy at SERI, regarding the Usindiswa Commission of Inquiry and the results that have come thereof. Lauren, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Now, it's been a few months since we've gotten Premier Panyaza Lesufi has gotten sight of the Commission of Inquiry report. What is your immediate reaction?
Yes, hi, and to your viewers. Our immediate reaction is a positive one, and we commend the Premier and the Commission on the work that it's done and on the recommendations that are made in the report. For example, one of the key recommendations, or one of the findings, in fact, is about root causes of the inner city housing conditions, which are identified as being about dire poverty and a lack of affordable housing supply. Linked to that, the Commission finds that use of the term hijacked buildings isn't appropriate because people are driven by poverty, and in fact, in only 5% of buildings is there evidence of people paying rent to a non-owner. So it's very important, I think, that the Commission's report overturns that widely held myth about buildings being hijacked, and it goes further, encouraging politicians and officials to desist from using that characterization. And we would also add the media.
So what is the alternative to hijacked building, Lauren?
Well, the alternative to the word is to look at the fact that people are living informally, much like in informal settlements, except in a higher density context. And instead, what we would be asking, what we would be supporting, which is what the Commission is asking, is that there be a coherent plan. It doesn't find that the city of Johannesburg has a coherent plan in place. However, what it does say is that there is an existing, although outdated plan called the Inner City Housing Implementation Plan, which it recommends be recalibrated, in other words, updated for any outdated figures, both numbers and rands and cents, and implemented, because this plan has the potential to address the root cause, which is a housing crisis. Furthermore, the Commission finds, much like your previous speaker was calling for, from Abahlali Basim Jondolo, it finds that where there are organised residents who have formed committees in a building, they should be consulted. Meaningful engagement should take place with them. So that's an alternative that's quite a move from the commonly held assumptions which we see at the moment.
Now, from this report, from what we gather, the city of Johannesburg is itself not without blame, and that's because 71.26% completely lacked fire safety equipment. That there was also the use of combustible materials and blocked escape routes, which further exacerbated the danger.
Yes. So what the Commission finds is what you presented. It then goes on to recommend that basic services be provided immediately. We support this recommendation because people are living in unsafe conditions, not because they're criminals, but because they have no other option. And in the Commission's proceedings, we had testimony from fire experts. And what we learned from that is that access to water is critical, and well-lit fire escape routes. So the city should really be starting there and then moving on to, for example, sanitation. Potentially in an incremental way, reconnecting toilet facilities, for example, would be the ideal outcome. But in the interim, everybody needs access to safe and dignified services.
Lauren, what is the conversation around the fact that the buildings that are taken over, if you will, are themselves dilapidated and run down and dilapidated because the city is not taking care of them?
Yes, so we would prefer to refer to them as occupied. They haven't been taken over by criminal syndicates, as has been the commonly used terminology. But notwithstanding that, yes, responsibility does lie with the City of Johannesburg, and particularly with the Johannesburg Property Company, whose responsibility it is to manage these buildings. Also private owners. Some of these buildings belong to the city. Some of the buildings belong to private owners. In some cases, you can't locate the private owners. But whatever the case is, it is an urban management responsibility that the city has not attended to and should as a matter of urgency. Those buildings are abandoned. Some of them are derelict, not all of them. Where they aren't derelict and unsafe, we at SERI envisage a different future, which is not relocation, but repair, maintenance, and upgrading where people are. So you need to categorize the buildings according to what their future should be. And you always have to take into account who's living in the buildings. This is not something new to government. It's exactly what happens with informal settlements. We're saying, let's see that happen in the inner city, in the buildings to which you refer.
Now, Lauren, as we wrap the conversation, were there any timelines given by the Commission? And does the City of Johannesburg, are they obliged to adhere or implement these recommendations?
So there are recommendations from a commission. It's not a court of law. The Premier has released them. It's his commission, and encourages the City of Johannesburg to implement them, and suggests or puts in place, we haven't seen evidence of it yet though, puts in place some kind of task team structure to implement the recommendations. We support that, but also add and request of the Premier that residents be added to that structure so that they can have direct access to what happens, as well as voice the realities of their daily lived experiences. We've also written an open letter to the Presidency, to Human Settlements, and to the Premier, requesting that they provide support to the City of Johannesburg to implement these recommendations. The obligation is the city's, but we're saying this is such an urgent problem that hasn't been attended to for so many years. Please, can they support?
Lauren Royston, Director of Research and Advocacy at SERI, speaking to us on the Usindiso Fire Commission of Inquiry and a subsequent report that has been issued and published by Panyaza Lesufi, the Premier of Gauteng.